Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Anauchi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're moving on from verse 16. We spent 3 days on verse 16, and now we're moving on to verse 17, 18. They're combined together. And this will probably take us 2 days. Yeah, 2 days. 2.5 days. Because these verses are a conclusion of 3 chapters, they're important. Because they're giving Krishna Tattva, they're important. Because it's speaking about the relationship of the material creation, the universe, and the source of emanation, they're important. And so our acharyas have given a fair amount of attention to what's being said. See the screen over here. Highlighted are the 2 words Kaivalya and Kevala. I just put in yellow the Kaivalya and Kevala. And because we're going to hear this morning Jiva Goswami explaining the significance of these terms. In summary, Kaivalya indicates the Lord himself. Kaivalya also indicates the condition of pure devotional service, or Kevala Bhakti. But he says it in his own way. And the impersonalists, they like this word too. In fact, not that he called it Kevala Advaita, but others called Adi Shankara's teaching as Kevala Advaita. Kevala Advaita, in that case, means absolute monism. So the devotees like this term. Vyasadeva likes this term. Krishna likes this term. Shukadeva Goswami likes this term. It's a Vaishnava term. It's a Sanskrit term that indicates one thing for the devotee and another thing for the impersonalist. And it's part of the realization of the Avadhuta Brahmana in relation to all of his detachment resulting from knowledge and detachment means attachment to the source of everything. So he's describing the source of everything in relation to everything, like this universe, and his different energies moving and doing things, and then being withdrawn, and so on. He's the shelter, the ashraya of all things. So now we're going to go to the verse. It's actually 2 verses translated together. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead displays his own potency in the form of time and guides his material potencies, such as the mode of goodness, into a neutral condition of equilibrium, that's cosmic annihilation, he remains as the supreme controller of that neutral state called Pradhan, as well as of the living entities. He is also the supreme worshipable object for all beings, including liberated souls, demigods, and ordinary conditioned souls. The Lord is eternally free from all material designation. Upadi, right? Material designation. It's in the very last line. Ni rupadi kaha. Upadi. He's free from any material designation, and he constitutes the totality of spiritual bliss, which one experiences by seeing the Lord's spiritual form. The Lord thus exhibits the fullest meaning of the word. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's translation of the same verse. When his material energies, such as the mode of passion, are in a neutral condition, by his influence in the form of time, the Lord remains as the supreme controller. The supreme personality of Godhead is the controller of the material nature, the Lord of the Purusha avatars, the only shelter of the living entities, including the demigods headed by Brahma. The Lord is fully transcendental, the personification of supreme bliss, the primeval Lord, and the giver of liberation. Here's the BBT purport. One who fixes his mind in the absolute truth of the personality of Godhead gets immediate relief from the waves of material anxiety, because the Lord's transcendental form is completely free of any material contamination or designation. Less intelligent persons accept the illogical doctrine that the Lord is transformed into his creation as pantheism and maintains no separate individual existence. They falsely imagine that they can merge their individuality into the universal oneness and become exactly equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, in the opinion of Srimad Bhagavatam, the personality of Godhead is not impersonal, but is instead full of all transcendental qualities. The three modes of material nature constitute his inferior energy, and the omnipotent time factor upon which the modes rest is the personal expansion of the Lord. Thus, the Lord creates, maintains, and annihilates the material manifestation, and yet remains completely apart from it. The conditioned souls who desire to exploit the Lord's inferior creation are impelled by the personality of Godhead to do so, and thus to become imitation enjoyers in the temporary world of matter. But when one gains practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul, one gives up the foolishness of material attachment and becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the theme of the whole section: knowledge and detachment, attachment to the Supreme. His real nature is that he is a servant of God. Service rendered to the Lord is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and by the potency of such service, one becomes liberated and his activities become glorious. Such service is eternal and gradually promotes one to the platform of Kevalanubhavananda Sandoha, or merging into the ocean of bliss by seeing the transcendental personal form of the Lord. Okay. Now here's Bhaktisiddhanta's purport, shorter. While trying to ascertain the nature of the absolute truth with the help of their speculations, conditioned souls come to the conclusion that it, the absolute truth, is impersonal. Less intelligent people, under the grips of illusion, imagine that the living entities and the Supreme Lord are one and the same. With this conclusion, they focus their attention on the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead creates, sustains, and annihilates this universe, which is under the control of time, by the three modes of material nature. The supremely independent Lord induces the conditioned living entities, who are his fragmental parts, to dance as the enjoyers of the objects of the senses. When one gains practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul, one gives up the foolishness of material attachment and becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is actual liberation, the highest form of which is to reside in Braja and relish supreme bliss, free from all material designations. Here's Bhaktisiddhanta's restatement of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. The Supreme Lord neutralizes the material energies, such as the mode of goodness, by displaying his potencies in the form of time. Even in that neutral state, the Lord remains the controller of the material nature as well as the Purusha avatars. He is supremely worshipable, Lord of all liberated and conditioned souls, because there are no activities such as the creation of the universe. In that neutral state, the Supreme Lord enjoys eternal happiness in his own mood, referred to as, what's the term? Yoga Nidra. He is called Nirupakadi, Nirupadika, because at that time his energy, Maya, remains dormant. It is stated in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that when the energies of the Supreme Lord are dormant, he remains awake. And there's just two more sections for this morning. Vishwanath's commentary. When his energies like sattva were brought to equilibrium by time, a form of the Lord's power, Atma Anubhavena, a form of the Lord's power, the controller of Maya, or Pradhan, and the Jivas, the most worthy object of worship for liberated and conditioned Jivas, the Lord is called Kaivalya, remained. So when everything is withdrawn, he remains. Therefore, he's Kaivalya. Where are we? He alone remained. Kaivalya means Kevala. In that oneness or purity, his internal difference is shown. His internal difference is shown. He has a variegated form of various types of bliss and actions arising from his swarup, which are pure, Kevala, because they are varieties arising from his swarup Shakti. I'll read that sentence again. This is Sambandha, and it's those Sanskrit terms to make it clear what he's saying. So the Lord has a spiritual form, Swarup. The form of the Lord is comprised of Swarup Shakti, and from that Swarup Shakti comes. You can say it either way or simultaneously. Both are correct statements. He is he is possessed of spiritual potencies, and Sarup Shakti is the totality. That's his form. So I'll read the sentence again. It's focusing on what the verse is saying. He is when he's perceived in this kevala or kaivalya situation, the fullness of a living entity's possible bliss erupts because there's a realization of his fullness, his form, which is his all of his potencies. And all of his potencies are then experienced by the living entity who sees that, and they're overwhelmed, plunged into bliss. Okay, I'll go back. He is the supreme shelter of his svangsha forms. It's this avatar forms. And the jivas, and is called Kaivalya. He alone remained. Kaivalya means Kevala. In that oneness or purity, his internal difference is shown. What's that? He has a variegated form of various types of bliss and actions arising from his swarup, which are pure, Kevala, because they are variety arising from his swarup Shakti, that Kevala nature is expressed. He is without upadis. It's saying the same thing in different ways, but it's fine to say the same thing in different ways, so it's very clear. He has a spiritual form that's not a covering, because Mayavadis say covering. That was yesterday. Vivarta. That's Mayavad doctrine. Brahman is covered. That's called Vivartavad. What's Brahman covered by? Is covered by, well, depends on what, but if it's what you call, or the Vedas call Lord, then it's mode of goodness covering, rarefied goodness covering. And then when it's insects, it's mode of ignorance covering. But all it is Brahman covered by something. And what's that something? It's false. Doesn't even exist. Anyway, that's the word jugglery. So then there's the Vaishnava understanding that we're getting from Vishwanath. And from this verse, he remains only with his form of bliss, since there were no actions, such as protecting the universe. He is without Maya, Nirupadika, which was sleeping at that time. So Maya went to sleep. But he didn't. It's Yoga Nidra for him. Then he quotes, and it's also quoted next by Jiva Goswami, Bhagavatam 3.5.24. It's creation, 3.5.24. The one Purusha who glances over Prakriti at the beginning of creation could not see her. He, possessor of Maya, who was sleeping, Maya was sleeping, and who is the possessor of spiritual consorts who were awake, considered himself not existent without her. No commentary. That's the end of Vishwanath's commentary. Here's Jiva Goswami's Krama Sandarbha, and we're done for this morning. When he brought his energies, this is a rewording of the translation of these two verses, 17, 18. When he, the Supreme Lord, brought his energies such as sattva to equilibrium by his powerful energy of time, the Lord, who enjoys in himself, who is the controller of Prakriti and the jivas, who is worshipped by liberated and conditioned jivas, remained in the form of complete bliss without Maya. And then his commentary. The first Purusha, or Adi Purusha, the creator of Mahatattva, the controller of jivas and Prakriti, by time, representing his power, Atmanubhavena, brought his energies to equilibrium. He is the supreme shelter of his Shangsha forms, that's the avatar forms, and the jivas, and is called Kaivalya. So again, Kaivalya is the Lord, and Kaivalya is also the state of pure consciousness that permits one to perceive the Lord. When you say Kaivalya, the Lord is Kaivalya, it's that you can unpack that and say what was said by Vishwanath. It's his Swarup Shakti that's manifesting his Swarup. It's Swarup that manifests the Swarup Shakti because they're inseparable. It's the state of oneness because the universe has been withdrawn and there's nothing going on but him and his Shaktis, spiritual Shaktis. That's the Kaivalya state. And it's the Lord who's the object of that Kaivalya state. That's what the Avadhuta Brahmana is saying. The prior just 3 chapters, or this is the conclusion of chapter 9. The prior 2.5 chapters is how to regard the universe with detachment. Now it's when the universe is withdrawn, how to regard the universe. State, because time energy withdrew the whole manifestation. And all there is the Lord. Because all there is the Lord in the manifest state, if one takes into account his energies are just being transformed and distributed in various features. And one should not identify that with reality. One should identify the resting place of all those energies as the reality. And thus detachment, by knowledge detachment. It's easy to say it, it's another thing to do it, right? Here we go. He alone remained. Kaivalya means Kevala. In that oneness or purity, his internal difference is shown. Same language, right? He has a variegated form of various types of bliss and actions arising from his Swarup, which are pure, Kevala, because they are variety arising from his Swarup Shakti. That Kevala nature is expressed, he is without upadis. And then the scriptural support for all of that is that same 3:5:24 verse. The one Purusha, this is the last for this morning, last reading. The one Purusha who glances over Prakriti at the beginning of creation could not see her. He, the possessor of Maya, who was sleeping, and the possessor of spiritual consorts who were awake, considered himself non-existent without her. Now, it'd be interesting to see what does that mean? He was non-existent without her, or he is existing with her. Say it positively. His sense of completeness is the connection with his potencies. That he is complete. There is always connected with his potencies. There's no feeling incomplete. But it's a way of saying his completeness is understood in relation to his potencies. Now, I was thinking about this with our, particularly for our three brahmacharis. Are you okay with going into these commentaries of the acharyas and hearing terminology and description of things that Prabhupada has given us in his books, but he doesn't, it's not so intricate and detailed like this. It's just kind of pablamized and everything is there. You know, it's the fruit before you make a smoothie out of the fruit. I mean, this is the details. And Prabhupada has given us the smoothie. Very easy to swallow and digest. And okay, great. And here it is before. He drew from these commentaries to give his Bhaktivedanta purports. And if one knows these details, then when you read Prabhupada's purports, it's really awesome how he did what he did. He wasn't unaware, but he knew his audience. So that's why I'm asking this question. Maybe one of you can get back to me. Is this something that we should continue with? Because that's what I've been doing. And I just want it to be meaningful and relevant. So, devotees, our newer devotees, this is like, way over their head. And for those that are used to reading Prabhupada's books, it's detail that makes the subject matter more interesting. And for those that are on a more advanced level, it's just jewels in a jewel box. Here's something that Jiva Goswami writes that says what I'm trying to say. The Vedas, plural, was originally one Veda. And Jiva Goswami gives the example. The Brahmanas who were conversant in the Vedas, they knew exactly for whatever the need, they knew exactly what verses to go to depending upon the need. But when Kali Yuga came around, he had to separate out verses. Jiva Goswami gives the example of a king's treasury. In the king's treasury, he has so many jewels. But what Vyasadeva did was he took, okay, over here go the rubies, over here go the diamonds, over here go the emeralds, and then there's some assorted other jewels. He just divided the one into four. Because the Brahmanas in this age wouldn't know just like which verses to go for. And then what to speak of, Kali Yugaites that don't even know what verses are what. So then there's the Smriti that helps us understand what the Shruti says. And then there's what the Acharyas are telling us what everything is, with references to the Upanishads and references to Vedanta and references to different Puranas and so forth. It's a Vedic education for Vaishnavas, but it's a little bit, it's not pablamized. It's, the ingredients of our Siddhanta. And these acharyas have taken their Siddhanta, from the six Goswamis primarily. So when we read Jiva Goswami's writings, we sit straight because he's one of the six Goswamis. And then the subsequent acharyas, Vishwanath and Bhaktisiddhanta, because these are the primary commentaries you're reading from. And of course the BBT, because this is after Prabhupada's time, they're drawing from those same things. Here's the Bhagavatam under the magnifying glass. Or here's another visual. I like visuals. Supposing you look at a tapestry under high magnification, what do you see? You see a bunch of threads going this way and that way, and it doesn't make any sense. And you take it out away from the magnification, and it's a nice tapestry. Now go back, and there's this thread, the green one, the blue one, the orange one, woven in a certain pattern. It does make sense, but if you don't know the big picture, you might get confused. Like, what's all this? But those that know how to make tapestries, they know the the magnified vision, what it looks like. This thread, that thread, the other thread to make a nice tapestry. So this is the magnification part, what we're doing, reading these commentaries. If you listen carefully, and from my experience, as you become familiar with the terminology and the methodology, the puzzle pieces start to fit together. Another visual. Look at a big puzzle with all the puzzle pieces, and it's like, what? There's what the picture looks like when it's final, and here's all the puzzle pieces. Supposing you don't even have the picture of what it looks like final. How are you going to put the puzzle pieces together and make the picture? So we get the picture, and we get the puzzle pieces. And Prabhupada kind of took it in between. He pablamized. This is my language. He simplified all the details and details and details, because his audience was everybody. Like we distribute the Bhagavatam these days, just anybody. And how is his audience was everybody, anybody, everybody. Radha Krishna has the experience of giving classes to the devotees in China, and they're further away than us. At least we have theism, monotheism, prevalent in America. They don't have it. So Prabhupada was addressing the world with all the details that we're reading from. So, I'm okay. It's a little slow going, but I'm a little bit sensitive to the audience, and there's newcomers, and it's like, what's all this? I've had the experience of going through this exercise of reading commentaries, and they go, what? And my answer is, just listen. And if you don't understand, it's okay. Just listen. Because the sound vibration is purifying. And from that experience, not only purification, but gradually the puzzle pieces start to make sense. However gradually that is, gradually it happens. The puzzle pieces start to make sense. So your brahmacharis could give me some feedback, not right at the moment, but later sometime. Keep going. It's good. Or maybe you want to change course a little bit. Because I can go faster and not read all these commentaries. That's an option. So any discussion? It's 12 after. Avaduta Brahman. Uvacha. Sarva. Where's the portable mic?
Is one of the benefits of understanding these details is that one could know the
Hold the microphone for him.
Yeah.
Hold the microphone for him.
One could understand the deficiency of Mayavad philosophy if one can understand these details.
I couldn't catch it. Yes. Yes. And it nourishes faith in The Vaishnava understanding, because Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadi, this not only Shingari Math, but the Western world is filled with impersonalism and voidism. So it's medicine, understanding the defects, but also nourishing the faith, not just in, God is good and God is great, Haribol, but wow, the extent is you can't find an end to it. But there's a science to it. Okay. Thank you for that sharing. Anyone else? Over here?
Maharaj, I didn't understand when you said neutral by time.
I said what?
Neutral, being neutral, like modes being neutral by the time effect. What does that mean?
Well, I'm not sure what your question is, but what's being described in the verse is the state of cosmic annihilation. When the universe is withdrawn, Mahavishnu glances, it's sent forth and does its thing. Now this is he withdraws it. Now, the previous verse was it's moving. This verse is he's withdrawn it. And during the withdrawn state, that's where the modes are in their neutral state. They're not active. They will be activated again in the cyclical fashion, but they're in a dormant state during this withdrawn condition. Does that answer your question?
Hare Krishna Gurudeva.
Mask.
So while this class was going on, I heard your word Nirupadika and just checked online what could be the meaning of Nirupadika. It's like in other sense, not the way it's just told. So Nirupadika literally means without upadhis or limiting adjuncts. And upadhi, normally translated as a limiting adjunct, is an object that makes another object appear to be different from what it actually is.
Yeah,
So,
that's a dictionary definition of upadhi. So now what's the point?
no, I was just trying to read out for my understanding. So neither of them really affect each other. So
Speak slower. What?
So neither of them.
The nature of them.
Neither of
nature of upadhis.
them. Neither.
Neither of them affect each other.
So neither of them really affect each other. They were giving a simple example. For instance.
Are you reading something?
Yes, sir.
Could you read right into the microphone, because your voice is. Okay. Consider me half deaf.
Okay.
Be kind on me.
Sure. Okay, Guru Maharaj. For instance, when a red hibiscus flower is kept near a transparent crystal, this crystal appears red, though in reality it is not. So the hibiscus flower is an upadhi for the crystal.
Okay,
and
fine.
It's
Okay.
going on to Atman.
Okay. I think our audience knows what upadhi means. Okay. So now, next.
So they were giving example on similarly the Atman inside the body appears to be bound by the limitations or characteristics of the body-mind complex, which is its upadhi. Even Brahman appears to be responsible for the creation, sustenance, and destruction of this world, though he is not.
What you're doing is just reviewing definitions of things.
Just for my understanding.
Okay. Anyone else? You have something?
Maharaj, I just wanted to say something about the last line in I think Jiva Goswami's commentary. It was talking about how or what was it saying, that the Lord feels himself incomplete without his potencies.
Yeah, that one.
I was thinking also that it, for our understanding, it can be for us too, because if we understand ourselves as potencies of the Lord, then we are incomplete without
Ah.
that connection.
That's Ishopanishad. Any experience of incompleteness is due to an incomplete understanding of the complete whole. That's from our side. Very good. You're a good reader. Anything else? Anything online? We have something online.
We have a couple questions. First one is
Read
from
slowly and clearly. Consider me half deaf and be kind.
Snehavali Devidasi. The Kaivalya, oneness of Maya with the Lord at the time of annihilation. I think we discussed this previously, that it's the only thing the living entities and time enters the body of Mahavishnu, but not the Pradhan, which is material. And living entities are a superior energy of the Lord and is not part of Maya. So how can we describe the oneness of Maya with the Lord during his Yoga Nidra?
You see a conflict, I don't. The energy of Krishna is inseparable from Krishna. So that's the oneness feature of the energy and energetic. So whether in a activated and transformed state, or whether in a sleeping state, the energy is his energy, and there's a condition of oneness in relationship between the energy and the energetic. So where that energy is situated is not the issue. It's the relationship. Is a relationship of oneness, of course, and difference. And that's the Kaivalya feature. Next.
Next question is from Shriya Devidasi. Is it okay to have attraction on certain subject matters?
Of course.
I know that I am not understanding discussions on creation or Sankhya, but I have an affinity towards them.
Sure. My contemplation on this topic, I mentioned it yesterday. This topic, the creation topic, and the universal form topic, they come up again and again. So that tells us, must be important. Whether I have affinity for it or not, whether I can understand it or not, it's important. So let me give submissive oral reception, make my best effort to try to hear and try to understand, and maybe I get 0.5%. But it's important. So let me keep working on trying to understand, because it's important. And gradually through purification and the puzzle pieces fitting together. Oh, this fits with that. Oh, okay. It was there all along, I just didn't see it. And then gradually the puzzle starts to fill out. So yes, it's natural to have affinity for one subject more than another. Here comes the microphone.
I was going to say the Bhagavatam also gives different levels of understanding also.
Yes.
Yes.
So expand on what that statement is.
Well, for example, in I think in Canto 4, Narada Muni talks about the living entities struggle and so on with the king. And so he explains 3 different times, actually.
He explains?
The Puranjana story.
Yes.
And then he explains again in allegorical terms.
Yes.
And then again he explains one final time. Sukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj. So, for according to different levels of understanding, or
For
the
different audiences.
audience, that's right. So it's presented differently. Yeah.
Well, here's another one. You bring the microphone. Another one is how many different descriptions are there of the universal form? You'd have to give careful consideration to how many different descriptions of the universal form. And there's many. And they're really, I mean, isn't it a classical question? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, universal form. Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 2, chapter 1, universal form. Huh? And that's just two of them. It's the same universal form with different levels of understanding and different perceptions of the same entity. And then we go to Canto 5, and then we see what Mother Yasoda saw inside the mouth of Krishna. And, they're quite different, etc., etc. So there's different levels of understanding of the same subject matter within one text.
One more question from Amara Devidasi. Krishna feels too far due to his opulences.
It feels too far?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty subjective.
Krishna
But he's close
feels
as well.
Krishna feels too far due to his opulences and feels close
Oh,
due to his sweet pastimes.
good.
What is the recommendation? Shelter to grow my attraction to Krishna as a person.
Well, here comes, it's a feast. And here comes all the different preparations. And which one should I eat first? Well, you're naturally going to eat the item that you find some attraction for first. I mean, some people might do it otherwise, but there may be the signs. Let me eat the bitter first because that'll. Anyway, but when you're done, there's diversity in the menu because that's what's good for your health. So you eat something of everything. So same for to understand the personality of Godhead, you can just chant and everything is there. But supposing you're not a very elevated person and, Krishna doesn't come out of the box. So then you read the Bhagavad Gita and you read the Bhagavatam, and now you understand more about Krishna. So when you're chanting the name, so you take the whole literature because that's the medicine. And you may be interested in something more than another something, that's fine. But take the whole literature. That's it. Srila Prabhupada ki